Hello guys, welcome back. It's been a while. I definitely took a break from a little bit of social media, a little bit of podcasting. I'm very happy to be back. I'm so sorry that for a long time I've been saying I was going to make new episodes, but I genuinely feel very aligned to be back here. It feels right. I feel excited. And that's really the feeling that I was looking for to be back, was to just genuinely feel excited and creative and whatnot again. And we'll get into all the ways that was kind of hindered for a little bit. But I'm back and I'm happy to be back, and you should be expecting more consistency from me moving forward. I want to say Happy New Year to everybody. Very excited about the upcoming year. Like I said, going back to what I was just mentioning, I just feel good about it. I feel like I'm in a very good headspace now. I feel very good with my business, with TikTok, with Instagram, with all the things that are to come. I'm very, very excited about everything. But with that being said, I will say that the last year was probably superficially the best year of my life, success-wise, with my career and whatnot. A lot of big jumps, a lot of big risks, but mentally and emotionally, it was probably the lowest year of my entire life. There's so much shit that went down in this last year for me personally, and it was hard. It was a really, really hard year. There was so many lessons learned. There was really so much exponential growth that came from it. But I think why I'm even mentioning this is because obviously the new year was 7 days ago now, last week, and as excited as I feel about this upcoming year, like I said, I just have like good feeling in my bones and my body about it. I just genuinely feel really positive. When I was reflecting on the last year, I definitely have a lot to be grateful for. But there was a lot that like I don't know if regret is the right word, but there's a lot that I would have done differently. And I think that there's some shame around that. Not for me. I think in society, like we always, we all know the phrase of like having no regrets, living with no regrets. Like, even if you make mistakes, they're lessons learned. And I'm all about that. But I do want to normalize a little bit that it is okay if you've made mistakes, or if things didn't exactly go the way that you wanted them to, or you have some regrets, or you have some things that you would have done differently. If you could, if you could turn the clock back, you would have acted differently, reacted differently, done differently. That's okay. Like that is totally okay, because as much as like I said, I'm grateful for the last year, there's a lot I would have done differently. Like there's a lot looking back that I'm like, I could have done that differently. And I wish I would have done that differently. And I regret this and I regret that. And I just think that you don't want to get caught in a shame spiral, right? Like you don't want to sit in it of like all the things you could have done, should have done differently. It's not so much about harping in the past and drowning in it, but it does help you learn and move forward, and do differently moving forward. And I think that's a lot of the conversation I want to have today, and even in the next episode, a lot about just behavioral changes and habit changes and changing the ways that you show up. And I do think that sometimes we do need to regret the way that certain things have happened, or the ways that we have shown up, in order to make real change. So if in the last year you are having some feelings of, in 2024 of, maybe it wasn't all positive, and you are having feelings of, I wish I did this differently, or I regret this, I regret that, like, it's okay. Don't drown in it. Don't stay in it. Learn from it and move forward. Like that's, where it begins and ends. So I just wanted to mention that, because like I said, I felt myself feeling a certain way, and then kind of feeling like, oh, but you shouldn't regret anything. Everything happens for a reason. And I do get that, but I'm a human being, and I think it's normal to feel all the feelings sometimes. And like I said, if you're going through that, or if you've experienced that, not even in the new year, just in life in general, that's totally okay. Just don't enter the shame spiral. So I have a couple of things written down. I was very torn on where I wanted to go with this today. There was like two topics I was very torn between, and I'll address the next topic in the next episode. But something that I wanted to talk about today was self-trust. And that was a big lesson that I did learn in this last year that I'm referring to right now. And it's something that is consistently coming up in a lot of the work that I do with a lot of my clients. And I felt like I wanted to address it because I think that it's very important. I think it's something a lot of people lack, even if they don't realize it. Like, I don't think it's as plain and simple as it sounds, like self-trust. And for myself in the last year, like I said, it was a big lesson for me. I think what was interesting was learning that what self-trust meant to me, or trusting my decisions or my judgments. I think I always correlated that with knowing if something was right or if something was wrong. I always kind of relied on my intuition, which is such like a buzzword nowadays. Everybody wants to know about their intuition. What's their intuition? What's their anxiety? And I'm in no way trying to talk anybody away from like their intuition, but I do think it can make things a little messy, or it can make things messy if you don't really know what that means, is what I should say. And I think in the, especially with social media now, but I think in the time that we live in, a lot of people put too much emphasis on what they think their intuition is. And without knowing what it really is, they're now relying on this thing as kind of like a magic 8-ball to just give them like yes, no, like very, black and white answers of this is right or this is wrong. And don't get me wrong, your intuition can absolutely guide you in this way. I just think it's very important that you know exactly what that is, or exactly what that feels like, or exactly what that means. And it can show up in many different ways. Of course, you hear of many people talk about it showing up as like a knowing, that it's just, there's no words attached to it. It's just this feeling that they know that something's the right decision, or they know that something's the wrong decision, or they know that something's off, or whatever it is. That's definitely a version of it, right? But we are more than just, our thoughts and our feelings. We're made up of so many other things. And I think what the biggest mistake I see is that there's kind of been this obsession around the intuition now. Like I said, almost like it's like this magic 8-ball that people shake, and it's just like, is it a yes? Is it a no? And it's like, if they're not getting a yes or they're not getting a no, they go into this frenzy of just like a lack of self-trust, where it's like they don't feel that they can make a decision unless they have a hard yes or a hard no. There's many different things in life that are not just a hard yes or a hard no. And the direction I'm kind of going with that is that that's very black and white thinking. That's kind of like saying that certain decisions are good decisions and certain decisions are bad decisions. And really what you want to get comfortable with or familiar with when it comes to this topic of self-trust, I'll just call it for now, is the tremendous gray area. Like, life is predominantly a gray area. And I think, again, too many people view really all of their life decisions, relationships, careers, where they're going to live, what they're going to eat, or whatever it is, what they're going to say, what they're going to do, as good or bad or right or wrong. And like I said, if they don't get one of those hard, concise answers, they freak out. And going back to what I was saying about the intuition of sometimes it's a knowing, but the knowingness is not always a hard yes, no, good, bad. The knowingness is really just a choice of alignment. And what I was going to say before that I learned in the last year is it's not always just a thought. It's not always just a drop-in of a feeling of like, yes, no, good, bad. Something I wrote down with myself is that it's really everything that makes up who you are. So it's the mind, it's the body, it's the soul, it's physically, it's emotionally, and it's addressing those things separately, like they're separate entities. So I was faced with a decision I had to make in the last couple months that I'm very, very happy with the decision I made, very happy with the decision I made. But I'm going to be honest, before it came time to me making this decision, I knew for a couple months that it was the decision that was the right decision that I had to make, but I was ignoring it because I didn't like what the decision was. I didn't like what the answer was. Egotistically, I didn't like what it was. I didn't like, I'll leave it at that. Egotistically, I didn't like what the answer was. But when I dropped in with my mind, when I dropped in with my body, when I dropped in with what I was feeling, when I dropped into my needs, when I dropped in with God, the answer was very clear. But I dropped into these things separately as kind of like a counsel. Like I addressed them all separately of like, what feels like the best answer in this situation right now. And with my mind, I received what I felt was the best answer. When I dropped in with my body physically, what is the best decision for this, or the best choice for this decision, I got my answer. And then it was like, after approaching all of those things separately, then I kind of addressed them as a collective, you know, and it's not, I'm making it sound more complicated than it is. It doesn't need to be like this sit down session with all of the parts of you. But I think what I'm just trying to drive home is none of the decisions I made or the answers that I received from all these different parts of me were a yes or a no, a good or a bad. Really, I was the one creating the good or bad, yes or no, the suffering around the decision that I had to make, or really by suffering, I mean like the tension around the decision. Whereas when I checked in with these parts of me, it was really just a matter of what feels aligned right now, what makes the most sense in this moment. So why I want to put some emphasis on that is because sometimes what makes the most sense is not the answer that you want to hear. It's not the answer that you were looking for even, or maybe it's the answer that you were like not even scared of in a bad way, but scared to make a certain decision because it's a big decision, or a lot of responsibility comes with it, or a lot of confidence has to come with it, right? Like it's like you're leveling up if you make this decision. If you make this decision, you have to leave your comfort zone. So I think coming back to the concept of self-trust, a conversation that I had multiple times in the last week with a few different clients. It's crazy how that works out. Everyone ends up being on the same wave every week. And everyone was looking for the yes or the no, or the good or the bad. And the common thing that everyone was saying is, I don't trust myself. I don't trust that I know how to make the right decisions. I don't trust that I can make the right one. And what it came down to with myself and with these clients was self-trust is not knowing, it's just making a decision. So it's not, you're never going to know if a decision is the right one or the wrong one, the good one or the bad one, right? It's stepping away from that. So self-trust is not, okay, I'll make a decision when I know. That's not, that's not trust at all. That's just a guarantee. Trust is saying, I don't know what the outcome is going to be from this decision. I don't know what's going to happen if I choose this, or if I choose that, or if I don't choose that. But I trust that I will be able to handle whatever the outcome is. So again, it's removing the focus from good, bad, right, or wrong, because let's be real, that actually doesn't even exist, that concept, right? Like we decide, we've made up what's good and bad, what's right or wrong, but really who gets to decide that? So it's not knowing and then making the decision. It's not knowing and making the decision anyway, and trusting that you will handle the outcome. Whether it's a good one, fantastic. You're moving in alignment. You know how to make better decisions for yourself. And if it's the quote unquote wrong one, it's still not a bad thing. You're learning what's not the right decision for yourself, what's not in alignment with you. So that is really my biggest advice that I've been giving people with the whole self-trust concept is it's not like, well, let's figure this out. Let's try to make this as certain as possible. And I'm not telling anyone to just like jump blindly. I'm not telling anyone to be like reckless, like obviously use discernment, but you're never going to have guarantee really with any decision that you make in life. And as you guys know, a lot of the, my past work or recent work has been more focused on relationships. And I always bring it back to, you might have saw something that I posted actually last week about trust, it's a choice. So even in relationships, like people, want to trust their partners. They want to trust their husbands. They want to trust their wives, their boyfriends, their girlfriends, whoever, their friends. Like they want to trust them, but trust, like happiness, they're like multifaceted, meaning like they're a feeling, right? Like you could feel trusting or trusted. You could feel happiness. There's things in our lives that can produce these, but they're not just feelings. They're also choices. Like they're also, meaning if you're not feeling happiness one day, you could still go and do things to provide, to bring joy into your life, or to bring feelings of happiness into your life, or to bring happy experiences into your life. So it's not just a feeling. So with trust, in regards to relationships, I think people sometimes are looking, especially people with trust issues is what I should say, is that they're looking for somebody that they just trust. And yes, there's definitely some nuance here that like you should have, be able to generally trust the person that you're with, right? I'm not saying that like it's completely on you. Like this person should be creating or providing an environment where trust is possible. But at the end of the day, it's a choice that you make. And where I'm bringing this into like the whole self-trust thing is that there's no certainty attached to it. You could feel feelings of trust towards somebody. They can help create an environment in a relationship where trust feels safe. But at the end of the day, you don't know. You don't know, right? Like anything can happen. And I'm not saying that to like provoke any feelings of fear of like, well, you don't really know, but like you don't. And that's where the choice of trust comes in, and that's where the risk lies. And in regards to relationships, and bringing it back to yourself as well, is that it's the same thing. Like it's not, when you're choosing to trust somebody in a relationship, it's not just that you're choosing to trust them. It's easier, way easier to trust somebody else in a relationship when you trust yourself. Because when you're taking that gamble or you're taking that risk of being in a relationship and trusting somebody and being vulnerable and depending on them and whatnot, you're also trusting that if it doesn't go the way that you're hoping for, you will be able to handle it. You will figure it out. And I've never yet met anybody who is able to trust their partners, their friends, their really anybody, but I'll keep it to relationships for now. I've never had a client or met anybody who was able to wholeheartedly trust their relationship, but not trust themselves. Meaning, if they don't have trust within themselves and confidence within their own decisions and judgment in their life, they're going to have a very hard time trusting somebody else. So when I work with people on trust issues in relationships in general, it's not really so much about, and again, there's so many disclaimers here. I'm not referring to people who have broken your trust, who have given you a reason to not trust them. Most of my content, I'm referring to people in healthy relationships where trust is a safe thing, but they're struggling with their own abilities to do so. It's not, I never focus on their partner, like every so often we'll bring some like evidence or data into the conversation of why they have no reason currently to not trust, but it's always comes back to themselves and their ability to trust not just their decisions, but their ability to trust their own resiliency, their own ability to take care of themselves, their own ability to move through things, their own ability to sit with hard emotions, hard feelings, whatever it is. That's where it lies. So there's probably a couple other things that I wanted to touch on with this. I think really, I talked about how it was a choice for sure. Well, let's go here for a second. I think the more common question that I hear when I'm having this discussion with clients or anybody is like, well, so how? Well, how do I foster this? Like, how do I learn to trust myself more? And I think what's interesting is obviously there's a lot of on this spectrum, but the two far ends of the spectrum that I see with people who have these issues in trusting their judgments, making decisions, trusting whatever it is, they either come from families where they had amazing childhoods and upbringings where they never had to worry about anything, and their parents made a lot of their decisions for them. They pretty much chose like where they were going to go to college, what they were going to eat every day, what kind of career path they were going to take, who they were going to hang out with, what kind of sports that they were going to play, and not in a controlling way, in a very just like safe, loving way of like they were taken care of. And then the very far side of the opposite end of the spectrum is people who came from families or situations where they were never able to trust their judgment because everything was always wrong, or everything was always criticized, or everything was always belittled, or everything was always, you don't know what you're doing, you don't know what you're talking about, I know better than you. So I've honestly moved a lot of my, we'll talk about this a little bit more at the end, but I've honestly moved a lot of my work on less focus on what has happened to us, because we'll talk about that later. But anyway, those two sides of the spectrum are what I see most commonly causes these self-trust issues. So when people ask me, well, okay, Kate, like how do I start developing this self-trust? And it's the very short and simple answer, which is everyone's biggest fear who has this issue, is you need to just start making decisions. You need to start making decisions, and you need to have less focus on what's right and what's wrong, what's good and what's bad, and more focus on one, alignment. What feels aligned right now, right? Even if I don't like this decision, even if I'm scared of this decision, even if this is a decision that I've never had to make before, what feels aligned with me right now? And the other part of that is focusing more on creating resiliency and your ability to handle hard things. Because let's be real, if you're guaranteed that every decision you make is a right one or a good one, you're not going to have to deal with repercussions of making a bad or wrong decision, because things will, you'll have jumped across the bridge and landed perfectly fine, safely, right? So why people have a hard time making decisions is obviously not because they're like, I'm scared that it's the right decision or I'm scared it's a good decision. That's never what they fear. They're scared it's the wrong one. They're scared it's a bad one. And why I kept saying like wrong and bad in quotations is because why we deem these choices, or these outcomes rather, as wrong or bad is because of the emotional experiences that come with them. We're scared that, we'll feel rejected. We're scared that we'll feel shame. We're scared that we'll feel like we dropped the ball, or we're scared that we'll feel regret, or whatever it is. So it's not so much the decision or the outcome that you're running from or scared of. It's the emotional experience that you are fearing might come with making the wrong decision or making the bad decision. So it's less focus again on like needing to know, going back to the intuition conversation. I kind of want to touch on that again a little bit more, because with the intuition thing that I'm seeing so frequently is, again, like I really want you to get more comfortable with not viewing it as I just know. Like, does that happen sometimes? Absolutely. Absolutely. But I also want to be clear that the just knowing with your intuition is never going to come to you in a place of chaos and anxiety and fear and noise in your head. That kind of knowingness comes when you are living in a place of alignment and peace and safety, honestly. But if you're a little chaotic up here, or you're a little chaotic in your life or in your decision making, you can't just rely on a gut feeling of I know or I don't know. And I'm still not saying that you won't receive it during that time. I'm just saying that you can't rely on that. And what I was trying to say about the intuition thing is that I think we tend to do this a lot as like a society where like there's something that like needs more attention or needs to be more regular or needs to be like destigmatized, and we'll do that. And then we kind of go too far with it, where now it becomes something that's like, whoa, wait, we got to like reel it in a little bit. Like we went a little too far. Like we have to like reel this in a little bit. Like there's some fine print here. And I feel like that happened with the intuition thing. Like I think the intentions behind it were positive, where I think the goal behind it was teaching people, I think especially women, but I think it was teaching people how to trust themselves more and to trust, their feelings, trust their intuition, trust their gut, trust that they know what is best for them. And again, I agree with all of that. But I think the fine print that we left out, or the disclaimers attached to that, is that it's not always available to you. It's not always clear. And the kicker is, if many of us do in this day and age, especially women, you have any kind of heightened anxiety or obsessive kind of thinking or rumination, or you lack self-trust, it's not going to be so clear. And why it gets clouded is the problem is not just like, oh, it's not clear, I can't access it right now. The problem is that we start to confuse it with our anxiety. We start to confuse it with fear. When we got drilled into our heads for so long that like it's just a gut feeling, you're going to know it. It's going to be a hard yes or it's a hard no. And now people, or I'm going to say people, but it's really a lot of women. They now get these gut feelings, but these gut feelings that they're getting and like these knots that they're getting is the tension around needing to know. So they're like, well, I have these knots in my stomach, or this feeling in my chest, or this tensity, or my palms are sweaty, or my heart's racing. That must mean that this is a bad decision. It's like, not necessarily. That might mean that you actually just don't trust your own judgment. That might mean that there is fear attached to this outcome. That might mean that you're lacking the confidence to make this decision. That might mean that some old shit or trauma is like showing its head right now. Like that's also what that might mean. So why I was saying that we need to reel it in a little bit is because I think a better way to navigate is, yes, trust your gut feelings. Trust when something feels off, when something, feels not right or something feels out of alignment, but use it more, which I think it's been referred to more as like an inner compass or like your North Star. Like use it more as that rather than something that is like this, like I said, a magic 8-ball or like a genie lamp that you rub and get like you get a specific answer of like yes or no. Use it more as a guide and step away from needing to know anything and start moving closer towards uncertainty and not needing to know, because I think the intuition thing has gotten so crazy because, again, it's been pitched as, hey, like you could have certainty with this thing. Like if you tap into your intuition, like you have certainty. You have yes, you have no, you have good, you have bad. And please don't get me wrong. I'll disclaim one more time. I'm not in any way encouraging anyone to move away from their intuition. I'm not. I'm really teaching you how to understand it better. And just a hard lesson that I learned in the last year was I do think that it's less about the intuition, and I think it's more about the fear of trying to obtain certainty. It's the need to know. It's needing to have control. It's, and your intuition doesn't work that way. Like it's not something that you can like attack and grab onto and say like, shake it and say like, give me the answer, yes or no, yes or no. And I do think you will find more peace in moving towards uncertainty and befriending it, honestly, and being okay with not knowing how something is going to go, not knowing if something is the right choice or not knowing if it's good or if it's bad. And I think the more that you can lean into that and get comfortable with that, the easier time you will have making decisions, the more you will foster this idea of like self-trust, and the more ease you will feel around. Because what will happen is you will start to deem uncertainty with no longer being unsafe. You'll start to see that it's okay to not know, because you'll see some decisions turn out the way that you wanted them to or easy. You'll see some decisions turn out hard, and you'll get through them. You'll figure it out. You'll come out on the other side. So befriending uncertainty, I think, is major when it comes to learning how to, I keep saying self-trust, but like make decisions, like be confident in your decision-making, be confident in your own judgments, be confident in what you choose for yourself or what you don't choose for yourself. So I do think that in the last year of my life, I was trying so hard to cling to certainty. I had a lot of fears come up. I had a lot of anxieties come up. I had a lot of insecurities come up, and I just felt like I needed to know all the time. I needed to know how things were going to turn out. I needed to know if this was okay. I needed to know if that was okay. I needed to know if this was the right decision, if that was the wrong decision. Like I needed to know everything. And the more that I tried to move towards certainty, or obtain it is what I should say, the more uncertain my life became. And like, don't get me wrong, your life is always uncertain. Every time that you leave your house, every time that you eat something, every time that you go to the gym, every time you get in the car, like you're filled with uncertainty. You never know what's going to happen. But what I mean is that I created more uncertainty in my life by trying so hard to obtain it. And this last year of my life, why I say it was so hard, and I don't want to move away from the beautiful successes of this year as well. I did make a lot of big decisions where I was forced to trust myself for sure. But I think a lot of my suffering from the last year came from that I didn't trust that if something didn't turn out the way that I wanted it to, or felt that I needed it to, that I would be okay. Like I didn't trust that, like I had this agenda of like, this needs to go this way, that needs to go that way. This needs to pan out that way. I need to do this way. I can't do it that way. I'll never do it that way. I can only do it this way. Like there were so many rules attached to it, and why it was such a hard year was not just because of the experiences that came with it, but honestly, it was such a hard year because I was so disconnected from myself. I was so disconnected from who I really am, because I became so much more attached to just outcomes and to the need for certainty, because the need from certainty came from the need for safety, right? Because I started to attach certainty with safety. But what I'm trying to get at with you of developing this trust in your own decision making, your own judgments, is starting to move towards uncertainty and starting to associate the word uncertainty with safety. Like they can exist in the same sentence. And something else that I have learned that I think was very, very crucial was that the more that you feed into needing certainty, the more that you feed into like, I have to do this, I have to figure that out, blah, 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 whatever it is, it's called feeding the beast. So you are feeding this thing every day, and you're not just like maintaining its life, you're feeding it like steaks every day and milk and like high caloric foods, and like you're making it grow, you're making it become stronger. What you're making become stronger, what I'm referring to with like your need for certainty and safety and like this beast, is what you're strengthening is the idea that I need to be in control and I need to know in order to feel safe. So every time this feeling comes up of like you need certainty in this situation and you act on it, you acting on it is feeding this beast. The way that I've broken it down to some of my clients is almost like if you have a friend who's just constantly like, I don't like this, I don't like that, or like, that's really bad, don't do that, that's really bad, don't do that. And you keep listening to her. Like if she's like, Kate, don't do that. I don't think that's a good idea. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not going to do that. Like she's going to keep giving her opinion because she's going to see that I'm listening to her. We're strengthening that part of our relationship. But if every time she says to me, or if moving forward, she says to me like, Kate, I don't think you should do that. I don't think it's a good idea. And I start responding to her by saying like, I'm going to do it anyway. Like I hear you and I understand that you're concerned, but like, I don't need to know how this is going to go. Like this is a decision that feels right for me. And this is a decision I'm going to make. You're going to kill that beast off when you stop listening to it, when you stop listening to this need to create certainty and to create safety for yourself. The more that you listen to it, the stronger it's going to get, and the more out of control you're going to get, and the more uncertain your life is going to become, and the more unsafe it actually really is going to become, which is so ironic because you're actually just trying to move towards more certainty and more safety, but you're getting further away from it. So the real way to obtain this is to just make the decisions. Stop feeding that beast. And I've said this before too, when I work with people on this, is that it's going to get worse before it gets better, because let's think about, if you're starving this beast, if you're starving this monster who's teaching you to not trust yourself or to hold on to certainty or to hold on to fear, being starved to death is not a quick and painless way to die. Being starved to death is takes some time, and it's pretty painful and it's pretty brutal. So when you start starving this beast of needing to have uncertainty and you start moving towards uncertainty, it's not going to be this seamless transition where you're going to be like, oh, I trust myself and I trust life and I trust God and like everything's all good. Like this was such a seamless transition. It's gonna peak. It's gonna fight back. It's gonna be like, what the fuck do you think you're doing? Like moving towards that and not towards this. Like who do you think you are not needing to have certainty in the situation? Or who do you think you are not needing to maintain control? And it's gonna peak. But if you let it peak and you can sit in that uncertainty and you can sit in that discomfort, what you now will begin to strengthen is the new muscle of, I don't need to know. I don't need to know. Like, oh my gosh, I don't need to know. And I think what happened with me, like I'll say like my remission with this, or my transition, or my journey with this, like it felt like it moved pretty quickly fairly recently, because when I started to not respond to that beast or that need for certainty anymore, or that need for like knowing anymore, or whatever it was, it became very clear to me very quickly. Like the curtain got pulled back, like, and all of a sudden I was like, wait a second. Like these things that I kept doing that I thought were actually keeping me safe and keeping me aligned and keeping my life more certain, it became very clear very quickly that I was like, holy shit, like, wait, these are the things that are fucking my life up. Like these are the things that are making my life harder. Like these are the things that are actually getting me farther away from the life that I want and the person I want to be. So for me, it was a fairly, not easy, but a quick transition, because I was like, I just saw things for exactly what they were. Like I said, it's almost like someone pulls the mask back and you're like, wait a second, like you're not the hero in this situation. Like you're the villain. Like you've been telling me this entire time, for most of my life, honestly, you've been telling me this entire time that you're what's keeping me safe. Like you're who I need. You're the part of me that I need to respond to. You're the certainty that I need. Like you've been convincing me this whole time, and then you step away from it and you have, some freedom from it for a little bit, and you're like, wait, you were the one keeping me sick. Like you were the one keeping me down. You were the one this entire time. Like I didn't even know it, So it becomes like a fraud, and you no longer will want to respond to that need for certainty, or that you can't trust yourself, you don't know what you're doing, because you will start to see very clearly that you don't need to know and that you can handle not knowing. And the way that I see it is like, almost like, I mean, this is a pretty extreme, dramatic example, but I would think of like, with like Gypsy Rose Blancard, how like her mom for like her entire life, like made her think that she was sick. Like she was in a wheelchair. She couldn't walk. Like I forget what else. She thought she had cancer, I think. I think at one point it got so extreme that she went and got like her teeth removed. But like her mom was sick, and her mom had something wrong with her, and her mom convinced her, which is like Munchausen's or whatever that's called, but convinced her that she was sick because her mom wanted her to need her. She wanted her to never leave her. She wanted her to just always need to rely on her. And she did. Gypsy Rose like was attached to her mom. She had no choice, right? Because she felt that she needed her. She felt that she couldn't survive without her because she thought that she was sick. She thought that she was incapable. She thought that she had all these things wrong with her. And I mean, I say it's a dramatic example, but it's kind of a good analogy, because like when she figured out that, wait a second, like there's nothing wrong with me. Like all these things were made up. Like you made these things up. And I say it was extreme because like she went and like had her boyfriend kill her mom, but like it's kind of the same thing in this situation where it's like you start to figure it out and you're like, wait a second, you try to kill this thing off now because you're like, there was never anything wrong. There was never a reason to not trust myself. There was never this weakness that I thought I had, or this insecurity that I thought I had, or this fear, or it was all perceived. And it was all something that this part of me made me think I needed it. I needed it to stay safe. I needed it to stay alive. And then when you break away from it, you're like, whoa, wait, like it was a fraud. It was the complete opposite. The freedom was about getting away from it and learning how to trust yourself, make your own decisions and whatnot. So this was an episode I was very excited to make. I hope you guys got as much out of it as I was intending. I hope I got all the points across that I was looking to. But I do think that this is something that you really, for like the new year, like especially with like New Year's like resolutions and stuff, I think a great intention for you to set is forget about like, I need to achieve this, I need to achieve that. That's all great. Like, don't get me wrong. I have things on my list as well that I would love to achieve this year that are just, human goals, like races and accomplishments and things with business, like all good, like not knocking that. But I think what my overarching theme for my New Year's resolution or my 2025 goals, and I'm turning 30 next week, so it's like almost like entering a new decade too, is that like I just want to be the healthiest version of myself. And I don't just mean physically. I mean mentally, I mean emotionally, I mean spiritually. And I know at this point in my life that everything that I just discussed to you in this episode is like a major pillar when it comes to being the healthiest version of yourself, is learning to trust yourself. It's not this self-trust thing that I'm telling you about. It's not just decisions. It's not just judgments. It's not just, am I with the right person, the wrong person, or is this the right job, the wrong job? Or it's not just that. It's trusting your abilities. It's trusting your resiliency. It's trusting that you might not know sometimes. It's just trusting that you will be okay no matter what happens. So I think that's a really great goal for you to set for yourself for this year. If you're somebody that right now that you're like, I don't really know what I want to achieve, or I have these things on my list that I want to achieve, and maybe you feel like incapable of achieving them. You feel like they're like out of far reach for you. I think a great place for you to start is just start making decisions for yourself and start trusting that you will be able to handle whatever the outcome is. So I want to wrap this up with just like letting you guys know a few things. Oh, so just some future things you guys can expect from me upcoming. Well, one, I just came out with a newsletter. It's free. I was very excited to do it. I came out with it last week. I just sent out my first edition, I think, on Sunday. It's the new like sector of my brand called Wellness and Wisdom. So I'm trying to move more in a direction with work of, and I mean, I say work, but with my brand, quote unquote, in not just relationships anymore and not just like the mental health realm. I'm really trying to move towards, similar to the conversation we had today, towards like just the whole person and the whole makeup of what it means to be a healthy person and be a secure person, be a healthy partner and be a healthy whatever. It's not just attachment styles and trust and good communication. Like it's really what makes you up completely, right? Like your choices, your habits, things of that nature. So Wellness and Wisdom newsletter is really, you'll get a little bit of everything in there. It's more of my writing, being that I feel like myself again, and I feel like I'm getting my spark back. Writing is a huge part of who I am. I did start writing a book last week. It's a goal of mine. I don't know how far it's going to go, or I shouldn't say how far it's going to go. I don't know when it will be upon completion, but I love writing. It's a huge part of me. So this newsletter, just a lot of my writing, kind of like in a blog format. You'll get things on relationships. You'll get things on health. You'll get things on physical wellness, mental wellness, probably a lot of the products that I've been using, like just like certain health regimens. You'll get some spiritual stuff in there. You'll get a little bit of everything. It's just a fun little free newsletter for you to sign up for. Now, something more exciting that is coming. I have something that I planned on announcing it on 1/13, so I think I'm going to save it for that. That's my 30th birthday. I think I'm going to save it for that. I don't think I'm going to announce that today, but something else that I do have coming is it's going to start on February 3rd, 2025, and that is the Confidence Rewired Academy. That is, so many people love to talk about anxious attachment and ask me questions about anxious attachment, and the Confidence Rewired Academy is going to be less focused on healing and trauma and our childhoods. And I'm not trying to make that stuff sound like boring, but like what has happened to us, and I was saying this to you guys earlier, what has happened to us eventually no longer serves a purpose. It makes things make sense, but it doesn't foster change. So the Confidence Rewired Academy is going to be more about changing your habits, changing the way that you show up, changing your decisions, changing everything about your life, your lifestyle, to move into a more secure and empowered space. So it's going to be a very fun container. It's not going to be so heavy into like the healing and like, again, the trauma. And I just think that stuff eventually like runs out of purpose. So it's going to be very fun. It's going to be limited spots. I don't know how many I'm going to take yet, but it is also going to be application based. So I'm not just going to take anybody. There is going to be an application to fill out because I want to make sure that this container is filled with people who really want to do better and be better. And they're really dedicated to changing their life, changing their habits, changing their decisions, changing everything. They're really committed to moving into a more secure version of themselves and with more confidence and more freedom and whatnot. So that is going to be application based. I'm going to drop below a link to this video. It will be just a sign up form. So it's no payment or no commitment or anything required yet. It's just that if you are interested in it, you can drop your email below and I will send you an application and then we can go from there. And I will also in the next week just send you more information on what to expect in this academy, in this container. Yeah, that's really it, guys. So I think, and with my coaching moving forward, that's going to become less frequent. I think I've stated that because I am going to be putting more focus into these academies. The other thing that I'm announcing next week, I do have an online-based subscription-based online community coming where I want more of my focus to be on there. It's going to be way more accessible for people, price-wise, price point. I'm excited about that. I don't have too much information on that yet. But anyway, my coaching is going to be shrinking down. I'm not going to be taking as many people in the future. That is also going to start to become application-based where I'm not going to continue taking anybody and everyone anymore. It's going to be people who I feel I'm aligned with them. They are aligned with me. Their goals, align or resonate with the work that I can provide, the wisdom that I can provide, the results that I can provide. And yeah, and we'll go from there. But it's nice to be back. Hope you guys enjoy this episode. Please go and follow me on Instagram. I don't know what's going to happen with TikTok in the next couple weeks. Follow me on Instagram. I post clips from my podcast on TikTok, but I really try to do more interactive things on Instagram with question boxes, what you want to hear on the podcast. I do want to start having like Q&A portions of these episodes. Those question boxes will be on Instagram. My Instagram handle is the same as my TikTok handle, Authenticate. AUUTHENTIKATE. I think I got that right. I'm not sure, but I'll put all my links below. Follow me there though for more interactive content. And like I said, I'm probably going to be moving more towards Instagram anyway. So it's nice to be back. Thank you guys for listening, and I'll see you soon.